thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me just check here to make sure. You can see it.
I can I can see your YouTube stream, and it's a few second delay. It's very disorienting, so I'm gonna look away.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean that's just how it is. It's always gonna be delayed.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Oh no.
yeah, the Facebook one is also a little bit delayed, but I think we're a-okay on it. All right.
I see.
All right, we can give it another minute here just to get some trickle in. All right. Getting all set. Are you doing well this evening still?
Absolutely. And you?
Great. Great. I'm hanging in there the best I can. Got a long week ahead, so. But, okay, well, I guess we might as well just get started and people can come in um, as we go on. So, all right. So, to anyone who is watching or may show up in the future or watch this once we are done, welcome to the first Ohio Independent Gubernatorial Debate featuring myself, Ryan Shank, running as a write-in candidate for governor, and Mr. Tim Grady, also known as the Dark Horse, who is also running as a write-in candidate for governor. Good evening, Mr. Grady, and thank you for joining me for this first independent debate.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. It's always important to make sure we're hearing from all the candidates. And of course, you and I, we know the struggle of going up against the two-party system, but the people of Ohio deserve to hear from all of us, even if it means we have to go about it our own way. So I guess we can get things started here before we start looking into some viewer questions and some submitted ones that we've seen before. I guess we can get started with some opening statements. If you would like to go ahead and get us started, by all means.
So I'm prepared for your opening statements. Hello, people of Ohio, or one viewer I see. I am the Dark Horse, currently embodied in the legal entity of Tim Grady, but I'm willing to trade the identity up until the filing deadline. I am running because it's time for something very, very different in Ohio. Something more creative, more detached from the politics of the 20th century or even the 19th century, which continue to persist and shape our views and debate, even though it's not very relevant to our problems that we face today. And throughout this campaign and throughout this night, I hope we all learn a lot about what we could be if we just decide to do something new. Thanks, and to you, Ryan.
All right. Well, thank you. I definitely agree with that. I think we are definitely past the time for something new, especially in Ohio. Um, well, to get things started, I'm Ryan Shank, and I am proud to be running as a blue collar Rooseveltian progressive, along with my running mate, Mr. Ivan Sampson of Dayton, Ohio. Um, Ohio is very special to me, and I know it's very special to all of us. It's our home, and many of us have called it home for many years. But as the years have gone on, even long before we were born, or even now, we're seeing Ohio be driven into the ground. We have seen that for the past 2 decades, what the two-party system and Democrats and Republicans have been doing to our state. Our infrastructure has gone downhill. The people of Ohio are making less and less. Our healthcare system is going in the toilet. Our healthcare workers are being neglected. Unions are being targeted by hostile corporations. Our government is completely and utterly corrupted with individuals who are seeking to enrich themselves off of the hardworking backs of blue-collar Ohioans. And it's time for that to end. It really is. Democrats and Republicans have both had their chance. And from what we've seen and where Ohio stands, I think that given another 4 years to either party, Ohio will only continue to go further and further down the drain. So I'm proud to be standing up for blue-collar workers. My running mate is as well. And I'm proud to be fighting for Ohioans to make things of the people, by the people, and for the people of Ohio once again. And with that, now that we've got our opening statements covered, I guess we can get right into some viewer-submitted questions for our debate. We apologize for the lack of a moderator. We have had some difficulty, specifically on my end, to find some individuals, but we still have plenty of questions that have been asked by prospective voters all from all around Ohio. So tonight we will be discussing the topics of healthcare, education, infrastructure, and government corruption, and what the two of us have planned and what we hope to accomplish if we are elected, and how to better our state in these respective fields. So getting right into the viewer questions, we will start off our discussion based on healthcare. And our first couple of questions comes from Miss Ashley Lonto of Etna, Ohio. And that first question is going to be regarding healthcare, and it is, what will you do to ensure that nonprofit hospitals are actually using the money for nonprofit purposes? I know that is definitely a hot button topic here in Ohio. Mr. Grady, feel free. May you have the first swing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Ashley. I will say that I have no plans on this topic. It's not something I've researched. I'm very weak on healthcare. I am a technology-oriented candidate. I'm not aware of what hospitals are doing to misappropriate money as nonprofit hospitals at this time, and I won't speak without having any clue what I'm saying. Yes, thank you.
I mean, I can respect that. I absolutely can respect that. But yes, thank you, Miss Lonto, for submitting the question. It's a sad world when we see nonprofit hospitals who we trust to obey the law and actually do what we expect them to do as healthcare providers are misusing their funds. It really is devastating, and it's taking advantage of the trust of the people of Ohio, and it's giving our healthcare system a poor name. It really is. So if elected governor, investigating this would be one of my top priorities. What we need to do to ensure that nonprofit hospitals are actually using the money for nonprofit purposes is, first and foremost, we need to learn about this issue. Of course, I've only touched the surface from personal discussions and from what me and my team have been able to research. But if elected, I would prioritize this by working hand in hand with the Attorney General of the state of Ohio. We need to launch an investigation to accused nonprofit hospitals and understand where exactly where it's starting to come from and where it all started. And once we're able to weed things out, we need to ensure that we take a look at the laws regarding nonprofit hospitals. We need to close any loopholes regarding it. And based on the findings of the investigation, we need to ensure there's appropriate punishment for those who are abusing the law and abusing their namesake for either personal or corporate purposes. It's not fair. Healthcare is meant to help people, and when they take on the title of a nonprofit hospital, they are meant to use it for nonprofit purposes. And if they're going to abuse that, then we need appropriate punishment dealt by the state. We need to close the loopholes within the laws and continue to investigate it further. Now, one thing I did want to ask you, Mr. Grady, is that you did mention how this wasn't something you had really looked into, as you had stated, correct? Or something that, wasn't
It's never come across my radar. Haven't
right,
heard of it.
right, come across. If you were to be elected and you were to be looking into this, what kind of method would you go about it? Of course, that's regarding getting and gathering more information, but if the people of Ohio were to entrust you with this process, what would you do?
I suppose I would just begin by directing the legal and investigative framework of Ohio's government to look into it and bring me information on it, because I am sorely lacking in said information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. No, I would put that off on someone else. I have no current working knowledge of this.
Mm-hmm. Would you entrust, say, the Ohio Department of Health to look into this issue or anything along those lines?
Is it an issue? Yes, I would. Again, I've not heard of it, so I don't know. But I do like to learn about it, so I'll get back on. It would not be a top priority for me, unfortunately. I would focus on other aspects of ensuring the integrity of our healthcare system. It's not a top priority for me. I'm just being honest there. I would leave that to the Attorney General and the investigative resources of Ohio if there is something untoward happening, if it is less criminal and more a matter of the basis of nonprofit hospitals is not well established in such a way to always ensure that they are working in the best interests of the patients and community they serve, and are pursuing a more profit-driven structure. We may have to reevaluate that. I am, of course, think in terms of incentives, and we may have to realign some incentives in the healthcare sector there.
Right.
But woefully uninformed. I would not be the person to entrust with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I can respect the honesty. Absolutely. Well, you did touch upon a little bit there of the integrity of our healthcare system, which actually I think is a perfect segue into Ms. Lanta's second question, which is how will you crack down on lobbying from hospital associations from blocking safer work environments for all people in Ohio? Would you like me to kickstart this?
Yeah.
All righty. All right. Well, I think it goes without saying that lobbying is such a huge issue. We all know it. We know it far too well. It occurs within the United States Congress, and it occurs on the state and local levels as well. There are numerous special interest groups that are at play all the time in our political landscape, and it breaks my heart to see that we have hospital associations and lobbyists that are trying to block safer work environments for individuals that work all across the state. And particularly when it comes to our healthcare system, of course, there's, for some reason, a lot of heated debate on bringing protections for our healthcare workers on the front line. And personally, I don't understand why. I mean, these are individuals that have gone through the schooling, they put in the hours, they work endlessly, tirelessly, and compassionately to make sure that we and our family members and loved ones are healthy. I mean, at the very least, they deserve to be protected in their work environments. And when it comes to the lobbying efforts, unfortunately, there are numerous laws that protect lobbying within the state legislature in Ohio. As governor, I would want to take a look at these laws and begin sitting down with the current legislators to begin investigating these lobby laws to see if we can potentially reform it. Because it's gotten to the point where individuals and special interests that lobby our representatives are having their voices heard and their opinions heard on the state floor while completely neglecting the people of Ohio and what we need. Everyone deserves to go to work in a safe location and not have to put themselves on the line every day that they go in. So, what we need to do is take a look at these lobbying laws and we need to reform it to where we limit those who are able to get a hold of our legislators. Instead of being able to have a front row seat and first access to those that are meant to represent the people, we need to have it where they need to go through the same channels like we do. They should not be the first ones in line. And especially if they're advocating for blocking of safer work conditions. If you are going to take such a hostile stance with your lobbying, I personally believe that you shouldn't be lobbying. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I know for some of these organizations, it comes at an additional cost if they were to provide safer work environments, especially for our healthcare workers. And I personally believe that that is just ridiculous. If you have a hostile stance, I believe that we should take a look into the laws to have it be where you shouldn't have to go through a separate channel and you shouldn't be allowed to lobby our members because the government is there to help people. It is there to provide safer working conditions and protect people. Just because a few corporate entities don't want to pay more money to ensure that their workers are safe, that's not reason enough to allow these people to continue on. It's hostile, it's unfair to the people of Ohio, and we need to look into it more to where they're not the ones who are getting a front row seat and the first ones to be heard by our legislators.
Lobbying is just one of those aspects of a representative democracy that things start to break down as government oversees larger and larger areas, and it's difficult. The nature of special interests and lobbyists is that they will always have stronger incentives to be working for legislation that favors them over the broad dispersed populace, which would normally see only minor benefit from legislation that favors them. So it's really a question of how do you deal with lobbying and special interests in a fair and productive manner. And part of that is basically to have rival special interests and lobbying efforts, ideally, I suppose, from well unionized healthcare workers. Short of that, what you would want to pursue is something like 17% less democracy, where you would perhaps, for a lot of these things, it may prove better to distance the interests of different groups or voters or politicians and put slightly more power in the hands of bureaucratic institutions like a health department to oversee and help write and maintain the best possible codes for hospital working environments in general, which of course is still subject to lobbying, and more importantly, that would become subject to corruption. But that would be a matter of addressing other corruption, limiting like what jobs you can take after that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. I can semi understand it. However, the problem I'm having is the idea of giving more power to bureaucratic institutions like the Department of Health. I mean, for the past 2 decades, we have seen bureaucratic institutions take the lead on this. We've seen individuals who run these departments with ties to these hospital associations and to um, corporate healthcare run the show for many years, and um, we can continue. Either we can continue to put faith in these institutions and, in my belief, see similar results that we have been seeing, or what I think Ms. Lanto is asking here is, how can we stop corporate interests in the healthcare industry and these bureaucrats from blocking legislation and blocking safer working conditions that are being lobbied by unionized healthcare workers and by the individuals who are working the floor? I'm just having trouble seeing exactly how giving more power to these same institutions that are making the environment less safe will in turn make things safer, if you will.
Well, who would who are you looking at as the beacon of hope to bring about a better future? The state legislature, which is composed of people who are not the brightest, tend to be lawyers or members of the business community in their own right, who are just as clearly susceptible to heavy lobbying and outright corruption. It's well, I guess I don't have. I mean, one of my main focuses in running for governor, in the inevitability that I become governor, I will. My main focus is to conduct a complete restructuring of Ohio's bureaucracy and attempting to acquire better talent, people more devoted to the task at hand, people less susceptible to corruption. But in the end, what we have are human problems. You can't design a perfect system. You can't make. What you need is people, voters, to be more responsive, which their interest in state government is already pretty limited. I think I've lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. It's, I mean, you want to ban lobbying, you want to ban the power of special interests and corporate groups, but special interest lobbying is how a lot of important work is going to end up getting done, because small groups of concerned individuals or businesses or people who have some skin in the game, something at stake here, are going to be the people who are going to agitate for action, who are going to try and make something happen, like climate activists or healthcare workers who want safer work environments. So, do you want to just pass laws that specifically favor some select group of special interests or organizations over others? How do you, who chooses that? And how do you make that not just as suffocating to democratic civil society norms in the long term?
Well, I don't. When I'm discussing the ban of lobbying, I'm not necessarily talking about banning lobbying as a whole. I'm primarily talking about these corporate interests and these special interests that are, like Ms. Lanto asks, are lobbying to block legislation that would create safer work environments. I mean, that to me, it doesn't. There's no logical reasoning to have groups block safer work environments, block anything that could actually benefit individuals in the long haul.
But, you know, what reason is there for a politician to accept that lobbying? None, but they'll do it anyways. So,
right. Well, of course, many legislators will accept that lobbying because I have no doubt that many of them have some sort of financial tie to that organization or receiving some sort of political compensation or support for their reelection bid or their campaigns or anything along those lines. When I'm specifically talking about special interests, I'm talking about um, healthcare conglomerates. I'm talking about those individuals who are profiting off of the work of our healthcare workers. I absolutely believe in the right of individuals to go and talk with their representatives and sit down and bring up their concerns. Where I draw the line is individuals who are being so openly hostile to something that would benefit people. I think what we're seeing here by continuing to allow these special interests go and play, like those who are lobbying for this, is essentially diminishing the voice of the unionized healthcare workers and those who are trying to get their voices heard, because it's the result of the same bureaucratic institutions and same conglomerates making the rules of the game and running the game for decades. I think it would be fair to give the healthcare workers who are putting in 12 plus hours a day, working tirelessly to provide quality care to their patients, balancing their personal lives, running from one end to the floor to the other, and are doing the charting and doing things of that nature. I think it's fair to finally let their voices be heard and not be drowned out by corporations and their interests who are fighting to not only prevent safer work environments, but are also currently fighting for legislation that is currently being discussed in the legislature to cap nursing wages. I believe that's absolutely ridiculous, and it's hard to see special interests be a part of a functioning representative democracy when it's corporations that are being represented and not the individuals and the people of our states. So I think that's just where I think that's what irks me the most, is that we can talk about how we're a representative democracy, but who is our government representing? Is it those who donate millions to their campaigns and are lobbying for things like this so they don't have to pay more or pay their workers more or provide better environments? Or is it the individual who's suffering as a consequence for this? And if we take a look at how Ohio has been governed for the past couple of decades, I think the answer is very clear.
I think it doesn't work as a general rule, though. I think it makes sense for you or I to say, we will, in office, support safer work environments. But I don't think you can make it, I don't think it's in anyone's interest as a general rule to try and pick and choose what lobbying efforts are acceptable. Probably many of them should be reduced. I personally would like to target 501c4s a little more in their activities, but it's, as a general rule, just saying you're not allowed to lobby against something that would be good for a group of people or society as a whole. That's a very risky endeavor there, deciding what is good, what works. I mean, I'm not for capping nurses' wages, but someone could easily make the argument that capping nurses' wages allows hospitals and healthcare institutions to save money that they need to invest in other aspects of patient care, which I don't agree with that. But as an example of, what you're picking and choosing here, you're creating rules that can't be applied consistently.
Yeah, I can understand that. Um, I would argue that we are currently seeing that exact same system play out, but there's just no legal aspect to it. But we just have a government that is pushing for that. And so I can definitely understand that. For the sake of continuing on with our debate and keeping in with time, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. And the final question from Ms. Lanto regarding healthcare, and that is, what will you do to make sure we can retain nurses/teachers? Both will be facing a high turnover due to conditions with COVID. So I guess ball's in your court for this one. By all means, what will you do, Mr. Grady?
I am continuously less and less concerned about fallout from COVID long term, just in the nursing and teaching professions, which are not particularly easy professions and have not been particularly well supported. I don't have any specific policy suggestions to address nursing, like work environment or pay or systems of that area, because I don't know what the government's authority is there generally. Teacher pay, I would like to see, obviously, an increase in teacher pay and rework in funding, as well as proposing better methods for managing changing educational demands. In nursing, basically, my approach to that is in higher educational shifts of more funding for nursing colleges and less debt burden. Hospital regulation, I have nothing in particular on that with nurses right now. Just thanks. Yours.
All right. Well, I think it goes without saying that we're not only seeing this in Ohio, but all across the country, is that there is going to be very high turnover with nurses and teachers. If there were any two professions I could point out that have been taken for granted by government agencies and those in power for long periods of time, it would be nurses and teachers. And of course, we are still struggling with COVID. I believe we still need to be looking into problems to make sure that that infection rate is finally hitting zero, and that we're making sure that people are getting vaccinated, of course. But when it comes to retaining both our nurses and teachers, I think it's just time to stop talking about how grateful we are for them and start acting like we truly are grateful for them. Which is why in my proposals, I would recommend and pursue, by either use of the executive order or through legislative means, to disperse $1,000 bonuses for all healthcare workers and educators. They've been to hell and back through COVID. They've been bearing the weight of the world on their shoulders for the past few years with this horrific pandemic that we've had. And it was nice of Governor DeWine to say in his State of the State address that he's eternally grateful for their efforts. But in the end, it's just words. We're far past the time for talking. It's time that we start showing our teachers, our educators, and our nursing staff and our healthcare workers that we care for them. So $1,000 bonuses being dispersed would absolutely, I think, begin showing that gratitude for them. Of course, also along with that, to make sure we are retaining nurses, I would also look to incentivizing the increase of scholarships offered to those who want to attend nursing school or some sort of medical field. When it comes to our educators, I believe that we need to stop making them pay out-of-pocket costs for supplies that they need in the classroom. It's not fair. I mean, currently they are able to write off some of their supplies as a tax deductible. And I would either recommend that we need to increase funding to our educational sectors to ensure that we are providing all of our educators with the proper tools that they need, or we need to make it to where they can have a 100% tax deductible when it comes to supplies that they are purchasing for their classrooms. We need to begin ensuring that we are protecting teachers, giving them voices. They have been demonized to no end by numerous members of some political groups, and particularly in some radical elements. And it decentivizes people. Our frontline workers are just completely ignored. We need to begin providing protective equipment for our frontline work, for our healthcare workers. We need to make sure that they are being paid properly by ending any discussion of capping nurse wages. Of course, that is absolutely something I'm not also aligning myself with Mr. Grady. I think that is an absolutely ridiculous idea that that's even being discussed right now.
Absolutely. Free market wages.
Oh, absolutely. It's just ridiculous that it's even a topic.
We
And
do have quite a labor crunch.
oh, absolutely. I would love to see it to where outside of the proposed bonuses as well, I would love to see salaries begin increasing for our educators and also for our healthcare workers. It's only fair. It's I'm sick and tired of all the politicians talking and being grateful and saying kind words. It's time that we start showing both our teachers and nurses that we are grateful and that we do care by actually acting on our words, not just talking about them.
I'm not sure $1,000 bonuses is truly a meaningful action in creating more sustainable working conditions for teachers and healthcare workers. However, I am not prepared to offer better solutions at this time, aside from a very general, significant restructuring of our education and healthcare institutions, which goes, I think, beyond the scope of this current question, as we are about 30 minutes into
Yes,
the
there's
first
still a
debate.
lot more to cover. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that $1,000 bonuses would be just a gesture of gratitude. Now, will it necessarily go to improving their conditions or anything along those lines? Well, I would much rather save that for our final question when it comes to healthcare in the state of Ohio. And that brings us to the last one. And this comes from Alexis Glazer from Cleveland. And she asks, what is your overall plan to improve the healthcare system and the quality of care given to patients? Since you took the lead on the last one, Mr. Grady, I guess I'll take the lead on this one. And it's an excellent question because we're doing terrible when it comes to our healthcare right now. We're 41st in quality of healthcare in the entire nation. We're 44th in infant mortality. We're 38th in positive treatment outcomes. We're 31st in accessibility to healthcare, despite being the 7th most populous state. And we're 47th when it comes to funding our healthcare system at only about $14.07 billion. Now, COVID exposed all of these flaws that we have within our system. It showed how underprepared our healthcare system was and how lazy our government got when it came to improving our healthcare system. I know a lot of legislators like to focus on what we can do at the corporate or management level. However, I believe we need to begin taking a different approach when it comes to improving our system and improving the quality of care given to patients. And that comes in the form of my proposed Ohio Cares plan. Under this plan, I am proud to say that this plan was not formulated by me, but was formulated from discussions I've had with healthcare workers, from nurses that work the floor to physicians to representatives of nursing associations. And together we were able to pool these ideas to create our Ohio Cares plan. So it is 100% created by healthcare workers for healthcare workers. And under this plan, it would begin by protecting our healthcare workers, because quite frankly, they're the ones who are responsible for a majority of it, and they're the ones who are being driven into the ground by a loathsome and ridiculously unfair system. Under my Ohio Cares plan, we would begin by establishing nurse to patient ratio caps at about 5 or 6 patients to 1 nurse. This way we can prevent healthcare worker burnout. And this way we don't have it to where nurses are running around the floor trying to take care of 13 people at once, which goes to not only completely completely ruin the stamina of the healthcare worker, but also diminishes the quality of care they're able to administer. I believe installing these caps at the recommendation of several nurses would be a great way to begin preventing burnout. Uh, Under the plan, we would create safe harbor laws, which would allow healthcare workers to refuse to do an action if told to by management if they believe it will put their own health in jeopardy or their own well-being in jeopardy. I mean, they are already risking enough. It's ridiculous that corporate is pushing them to put themselves on the line even more. I would work closely with the Ohio Department of Health to ensure that our system, that our hospitals in every region of the state are adequately equipped with protective gear plus a spare for all of our healthcare workers. I mean, we saw the images of nurses wearing trash bags and makeshift masks just to try and protect themselves when COVID first started. I mean, it's ridiculous that was even the case. It's putting them at risk, and it's putting those who they try to take care of at extreme risk as well. Another part of the Ohio Cares Plan that I would like to propose comes in the form of, as I mentioned, also establishing that $1,000 bonus that comes along with it. But of course, I would also love to see it to where we can overall establish employee retainment rewards for medical facilities that are able to keep their workers. This way, they can receive more funding and that they would be able to invest it within their workers themselves. And I think overall that would be absolutely tremendous. And second to last point of my plan would be increasing penalties for facilities and individuals who are violent with healthcare workers or threaten them or try to intimidate them. It's not right, and this intimidation can drive people away from the profession, and it can diminish their morale, and it's just simply not fair. And then finally, I would look into creating a healthcare workers bill of rights. They deserve to be protected and not face termination or intimidation from corporate or management for pointing out malpractice, for pointing out poor practices done by their respective clinics or hospital, or for simply recommending that they do something better. To me, it's all about protecting the healthcare worker. And once we start protecting them, we will start to see increase in the quality of care and an improvement within our system overall.
I find the healthcare system, and perhaps more relevantly, the healthcare funding system, to be completely incomprehensible and opaque. I have tried to understand the nature of our insurance system so I can understand what is going so wrong. But as of yet, I haven't really worked out exactly how all this insurance is working. And so I have a number of proposals for improving the healthcare system. Some I'd like to develop more, some I'm not terribly committed to. With insurance, well, this isn't a question of reducing direct costs to consumers. I would like to explore direct care models in the hope that improves health outcome and a better health work environment. I'd like to reduce middle management sort of in the healthcare system. I would like more direct control with doctors and healthcare professionals to sort of dictate their practices so they're not pushed on a for-profit model of you need to see this many patients in this amount of time. Beyond that, though, in improving healthcare overall quality, making a better environment, my main push is going to be massive investment in research and development of new healthcare technologies, utilizing a not terribly unique, but somewhat unique investment structure in the Ohio Investment Bank, which I'm sure I'll bring up many times throughout this and future debates, where we will invest in companies, in research hubs, in our university system, in what has the potential to be clusters like the Cleveland Clinic and the surrounding areas, although not giving special attention to the Cleveland Clinic, but just understanding that represents the nucleus of a research hub, which could improve our technology. This may be getting a little far out there, but basically, with healthcare, with education, with a lot of these things where we keep seeing costs rise, it's the things that are human driven. They need people to deliver the services. It's not we can increase production on factory floor here. It's something that has a direct care service. And so part of that in better care is increasing the number of people in the healthcare system, healthcare workers, through more educational opportunities, but also investing in the technologies that keep us healthier and allow nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals to provide more and better care to more people with less labor on their part. So it's really a matter of what are the technologies we fail to invest in healthcare and education and other aspects, other industries where prices continue to rise. What can we invest in to ultimately lower the costs and get some productivity gains there? So it's a technology and investment driven focus. Otherwise, it's I need a lot more people more knowledgeable and more ingrained into the system than me to help me unravel it. And that is one of the things I would do as a governor. Is in restructuring our state government, we would also build up the intellectual institutional resources to really start tackling our legal codes and the system that is creating, I'd say, bad incentives in the healthcare system, like the ability, well, we need some tort reform to address what is in overprescription of care, because doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals feel the need to provide more than what is due care, because failing to prevent something could leave them open to lawsuits. And we need to address that in a way that protects doctors and nurses better from doing a reasonable amount of care rather than an excessive amount of care, which can in itself be harmful to the patient, but is especially harmful to the system overall, as it creates immense waste and raises costs. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. And we'll just keep on chugging along here.
We may want to cut it off after just the education section, just hit 2 policy sections.
Yeah, it seems like that we have quite a lot to say on a lot of these issues. So we'll go ahead and move on to education, and maybe we'll cover infrastructure and government corruption in a later debate. So moving on quickly to education, our next question comes from Hannah Klotz of Amherst, Ohio, who seems to have commented. And her question is, what is your opinion on House Bill 616, and what plans do you have to protect LGBTQ plus youth? So would you like to get that started, Mr. Grady?
I consider the 616 bill to just be one of many stupid, ridiculous bills that ends up getting proposed in Ohio's legislature. I don't expect it to move forward, but we have a long history of stupid bills that don't move forward and a long history of stupid bills that become law, and we have to end up living with them. So my opinion is it's stupid and destructive and is a culture war attempting to infringe on the lives of children and education for no other reason than to score political points at the cost of the suffering of young individuals. I don't understand that at all. And more broadly, my plans to protect LGBTQ plus youth. It's generally to insult the insane people who insist on making this a political football wedge issue to score points. I would like to continue to insult those people and make them feel bad and look ridiculous. But in general, obviously, we should continue to extend protection and create a safe environment for everyone at all levels. To the extent that we need to codify that, well, I have to look more into the extent that something's actually happening, because as in 616, I don't believe in needless legislation just to serve a cause. What we need to do is pretty much what most, schools and care providers are doing, and that is trying to be open and trying to look out for the interests of the students and the people under their care. And I think the best we can do for now is support them, and as it becomes something that is more clearly something the legislature or the governor, the executive branch, can address, I would pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, just continue to enforce existing protections for all individuals and just try and make a nicer environment for everyone, just culturally. That's what my campaign is about. Advancing a better culture through election campaigns rather than legislation. We're a fun place here, the Darkness campaign.
Right.
Thanks.
Absolutely. We definitely share the same opinion on House Bill 616. However, given under different circumstances and a different environment, I would use far less suitable words when it comes to describing this absolutely egregious and god-awful piece of legislation. When I first heard about it, I was absolutely repulsed. And personally, I believe the bill's writers, Representative Mike Loychik and Representative Gene Schmidt, should both resign in shame, honestly. This, as you mentioned and touched upon, is a culture war. This only serves to fuel it further. We've seen it happen in states like Florida, being the prime example of this. And it's what this bill is intending to do is solve a problem that does not exist. I know discussing the bill, it talks about ending sex education for grades K through 3, which of course I absolutely believe that a child that young should not be learning about anything even remotely related to that. However, the problem I have with this is that they don't cite any examples. I've been asked about this issue multiple times, and how I can be against stopping the teaching of sex education to K through 3. But yet every time I ask an individual to provide examples of where in Ohio this is ongoing, I'm met with silence. This entire piece of legislation is being based off a defined narrative that is being used to push culture wars, dehumanize human beings for simply who they are. And I believe it's a disgusting and repulsive attack upon the LGBTQIA plus community. It shouldn't move forward. I pray to God it doesn't move forward. But like you mentioned, we do have a history of stupid legislation making it through. And that does indeed worry me. As governor, I would never allow something like this to even make it to my office before saying no. I would absolutely veto it even before it made it off the House floor or the Senate floor. When it comes to expanding protections for LGBTQ plus youth, I mean, we need to start targeting some of these practices. We do need to begin codifying a lot of different aspects of protections from discrimination for youth. We should be continuing to spread awareness of the issue and being teaching that there's nothing wrong with being who you want to be, loving who you want to love. And unfortunately, that's a route that has been completely ignored by many leaders these days. Personally, I think we need to start targeting, as I mentioned, practices. One of the most egregious practices that is still occurring in our state is the practice of conversion therapy. Thousands of Ohio children are being sent off to conversion camps to be, quote unquote, taught the error of their ways, as I saw one of the websites put it. It's torture under the justification and guise of religion. It's a repulsive practice. It's dehumanizing. And quite frankly, I'm appalled that Ohio even still has this and that it's still legal in several areas of the United States. So on day one, to begin protecting LGBTQ plus youth, I would utilize whatever power the executive office holds and ban the practice of conversion therapy day one, day two, however long and however fast I'm able to get it done. It's a repugnant practice and it should not exist. We need to begin taking a look at our discrimination laws as well. If I can just, yep, there. Sorry, I completely blanked and just wanted to check that. But I believe it is paramount that we change one of the hate crime laws. In particular, currently there's according to hate crime codes, it's currently called an ethnic intimidation is what it would be called in by law enforcement. I would like to tweak the law to where instead of that, we can have it be it called in as a bias motivated crime, to instead of specifically targeting racial hate crimes, we can begin targeting racial hate crimes, sexuality related hate crimes, or gender identification related hate crimes. It's something that will go a long way to protecting our youth, protecting members of this community, and ensuring that they feel like they're being safe and secure in their communities. Ohio will and always will be an inclusive place, no matter what some radicals and extremists are trying to push in our legislature, no matter how they like it. They can't erase the existence of LGBTQ individuals or our youth. And as governor, I refuse to see a bill like HB 616 ever make it through the legislature. And I refuse to see these disgusting practices continue under the guise and justified by religious means or anything of that nature. So all right, well, wow, we are almost at our 1 hour mark, so I guess we can speed through these last two for education if you would like to, Mr. Grady. Or would you like to take one more and then?
No, yeah, let's finish education. We can wrap this. Maybe we limit ourselves to 2 minutes.
Yeah, and hopefully next time we'll have a moderator that can help us keep it condensed. So second, our question comes from Thomas Rose of Dayton, Ohio, and that is, how can we better support local school systems, and how can we tackle the issue of youth suicide?
Those are two pretty distinct questions.
Yeah, they are indeed. You want to, how about we just target the how we can better support local schools? Let's go with that for right now. Maybe we can have that for the later question for another time, just for time's sake.
Sure. To better support local school systems, I would obviously take I guess it's not obvious, but I would take an approach of more centralizing our education funding through the state rather than through localities, and the focus on property taxes to fund schools. I don't think that's a good system. Obviously, we should, for a more equitable educational system, we should centralize state funding. I support a universal voucher system with which bans a topping up of the voucher, so you're not allowed to accept the voucher and then charge in addition to it. You're not allowed to use it just as a discount. That's an insane policy proposed by some in the Ohio legislature, particularly Maryland John and their backpack bill, which is just to give rich people a discount on their what is effectively a pointless educational difference, because there's no evidence that private schools have really improved outcomes. So it's really just a scam for rich parents, and I feel bad for those rich parents who are being scammed. A universal voucher system would allow people to move to throughout the school systems that best work for them. And since the funding will travel with the student in a state-funded sort of market-focused system, the schools will ideally optimize along those lines, although there's a lot more that needs to change for that. So better supporting local school systems, more funding, and state centralized funding for equality.
Absolutely. And we are definitely very similar in that aspect, because unfortunately our local school systems are very underfunded, and it's quite evident the more we travel around the state of Ohio and see what exactly is going on. I would also love to see it to where we can centralize the funding to be able to provide schools with the resources necessary. I think we need to be doing a lot to invest in in our educational infrastructure. I think there are a lot of underserved communities, specifically marginalized communities, who are being completely and utterly neglected when it comes to funding and resources that are proper to provide our youth with a good and honest education. Funding is definitely a major part of it. I believe we need to continue to invest in establishing broadband internet connection amongst all of our schools. I read an article once that stated that about 76% of Ohio schools currently have access to broadband. I think that's ridiculous in 2022 that number isn't at least 100%. It's just how modern education works. We need to get with the times, and we need to ensure that our schools have access to broadband internet. We need to make sure that all schools are amply supplied with the resources necessary to provide a good education for students. And I think it also comes along with investing in school transportation. We need to be taking a look at that issue. We need to be taking a look at how some cities are operating. I would be more than happy to sit down with some cities that have been struggling with their school systems and transportation and discuss what issues they have and what the state government can do to address them as a whole. So, and
I would like to add that, just on top of what I've said, our educational system is actually pretty much outstanding. Just America's and Ohio's is very good at what it does. The issue is much of educational success is determined outside of schools. So it's not always necessarily going to be that investing in our schools is the issue. In parts, we have to tackle poverty and health and family and just the communities that we live in. And this is really kind of the central issue that we will constantly be faced in on this topic and every topic, is that everything is unfortunately very complex and very intertwined in a way that just trying to focus on one lever will not get us what we need. And we need to continue, all of us, to collaborate on figuring out a comprehensive, holistic approach to improving all of our lives.
Absolutely. That
Thanks.
is absolutely. Yep. That is definitely something I can get behind. Every issue is complex. Every issue is multi-layered. One solution isn't going to solve it all. But I think we can definitely agree that we can get started somewhere. And I like what we both have in mind when it comes to supporting our schools. And finally, to end the night on this note, our last question for this evening will come from Taylor Adams from Jackson, Ohio. And her question is, with college education being a front page issue, how do you plan on making it more affordable? It's a rather simple question. It definitely is a hot button topic. I know there has been plenty of discussion on the national level about what we can do to ensure that college is definitely more affordable for those who are taking it. Of course, I would like to add real quick as a disclaimer, no one is required to go to college. It is purely left up to the individual on what they want to do. If they wish to seek out a vocational program, get straight into the workforce, by God, you have the right to do it. I think we need to ensure that our schools are making students aware of those opportunities and that we are expanding upon that to let them know that college is not the only answer for them once they graduate high school. It is entirely up to them. When it comes to making college more affordable, I believe we can start by looking at high school. I think we need to begin taking a look at how high schools are operating and work with our school system to expand opportunities for students to earn college credit, expand opportunities for them to take college level classes and things of that nature. The more credits they're able to accumulate, the less time they'll be able to spend in college, and they'll end up saving more money that way. I think it's a great start, and it's a great way to get future college students off on the right foot. Another thing that I believe we can definitely begin to utilize to tackle this issue as a whole is we need to investigate the student loan issue. I know a lot of the times that private banks and loaners and lenders are very eager to have prospective college students sign on, and what ends up happening is that many students sign on for thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of loans, only to end up being completely and utterly burdened by it for, if they're lucky, at the earliest, the next 20, 30 years, or at the worst case scenario, for the rest of their lives. We truly are facing a student loan crisis in this country. We can begin making it more affordable by targeting those who are hostile to students by lending them copious amounts of money only to basically own them for the rest of their lives to where they're paying this off. I think once we begin easing the burden of student debt, it will go a long way to helping also alleviate some costs for colleges overall. I know there's been discussion by President Biden when it comes to canceling student loan debt, and by many individuals. I believe Ohio can utilize such an idea as well. Of course, we cannot cancel it all in one stroke of a pen. We need to be taking this carefully and with the economy in mind, of course. As governor, I would like to see the approach to where we are able to accumulate about $2 to $3 billion of our budget and dedicate it towards canceling student loan debt for college students all across Ohio. Once we start alleviating these burdens, it will give them a brand new opportunity. It would alleviate them from poor economic circumstances. It would allow them to go out and make purchases, and it would free them from a burden that they would have to shoulder for the rest of their lives. In the end, I think if we are able to do that, and the positive impacts having such a plan on the economy in the long term, I think we'll be able to see the price of college education begin to go downwards. But I think that's what we can do at a state level. As for the issue as a whole, unfortunately, I believe it is in the hands of the federal government to tackle it. But I think that's a good start for us at the state level here.
Taylor, I need to see these front pages. I don't know anyone who's putting this on front page news these days. I'm very interested in this. Very interested. But with my plan to make college higher education more affordable, It's multifaceted. Obviously, our limitations are what the state of Ohio can do within the state of Ohio for the people of Ohio. And that mostly involves targeting the policies of our public university system and providing additional funding to those universities, which would inevitably have to be possibly taxpayer funded. First, I would direct public universities to develop more 3-year programs, accredited programs for degrees rather than 4-year degrees. Many college programs can definitely be condensed down, not all, but definitely quite a few of them. I would also direct public universities to adopt where possible and develop where not possible open source textbooks and more open source educational systems, and also through our public universities creating free open courses for the public to take that would be delivered fully online, fully remote, with very limited human interaction, which would allow us to scale education where we have not been able to scale before. This is one of those things where the cost continues to rise because it's very person intensive and demand has continued to grow. I do not want to limit demand. I obviously want everyone to be able to pursue more education. It improves our workforce, it improves our competitiveness, it creates an environment for ideas and innovation. And which is why I would focus on turning our universities into innovation and technological hubs that benefit the state through our technology transfer offices, which the universities and through the Ohio Investment Bank, once again, we would provide through the state angel investing, venture capital for new businesses partnered with our university technology transfer offices. And that will help start new businesses focused around our universities, clusters focused around our universities. And with the specific patents that would be transferred over, the university would earn percentages on that, which would help alleviate the cost to the taxpayer funding our research and educational institutions. I would also create more community colleges tied in with every high school, more vocational schools tied in with every high school. So there's a clear path to follow for students from beginning to end where they can see their future, explore their possibilities, and really from very early on be achieving those educational aspirations to prepare them for working or whatever it is they are pursuing. And I would like to see our public universities, our public educational systems more built into cities, built into communities, closer, easier to get to, better funded. And ultimately, what we're trying to create is a skills ecosystem, an educational ecosystem, which is open, scalable, and benefits the state in such a way as to continue to lower costs and increase our revenues, which we can then, of course, pass on to students. I'd also make sure that all loans given in Ohio, the universities who accept those students have skin in the game and are required to uh, accept some of that debt should the student be unable to repay it, such that the incentives change for universities to make sure the people they admit uh, can be successful, can have a career, can make money to pay off that debt. Otherwise, the universities will be liable for some of that debt. I know that was a lot. and probably should have been divided up. But check out darkhorseForOhio.com, and eventually that will be on there. It's not, but you can go look at it now anyways, and it's a very nice website with my face several times.
Absolutely. And yeah, a lot, it seems like you and I both like to go into very specific detail when it comes to our policy. Next time we definitely need to make sure we have a moderator so we can keep it as condensed as possible. But it was great sitting down and talking about these issues with you, Mr. Grady. Thank you, everyone, for submitting questions. I hope we were able to answer them. I'm sorry if we did not get to them tonight. If we have a second debate, we would be more than happy to answer the questions regarding infrastructure and corruption. But I think that will just about do it. Mr. Grady, was there anything you would like to add before we call it a night?
Nope, this has been delightful. I'm glad for the few people who have tuned in, and I hope more people will eventually see this video, or maybe not, depending on how I did. Maybe future videos. We've got this a little more together, a little better debates in the future. I hope everyone comes to those, and maybe I will promote them better.
Yeah, I will definitely
promotion.
I will definitely do my best in the future as well.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for pretty much doing all of the work here. It's much appreciated. I'm so thankful that you're running. I support everyone to run for office all the time, nonstop. It's very easy. It costs a little bit of money, but it doesn't have to that much. And it's fun and good for democracy.
Yes, absolutely.
I appreciate your work here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on and actually being one of the only candidates to agree for my challenge for a debate. So it was great having you on here. If you guys are interested, by all means, feel free to check them out at darkhorseForOhio.com. If you're interested, you can also check out my website at shankforohio.com to learn more about our platforms. And I believe our social medias will be linked on our websites there as well if you're interested. But thank you all for coming to the first Ohio Independent Gubernatorial Debate. And thank you all who end up watching this video for tuning in. We hope to see you next time. And God bless you and God bless our state of Ohio. Am I right?
God bless Ohio.
God bless. All right. Thank you, Mr. Grady. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Thanks, everyone.